This is the Registered Behavior Technician course presented by Shaza Attar. The course content was created by Shaza Attar and is the property of Autism Therapy and Training, Inc. All rights are reserved. This training program is based on the Behavior Analyst Certification Board 2018 RBT Task List 2nd edition and is designed to meet the 40-hour training requirement for the RBT credential. The program is offered independent of the BACB. Remember, in each class, we will have our active listening, a quiz, and a competency assessment. Welcome to our discrimination, generalization, and maintenance class. I'll start off today by talking about discrimination training and move into generalization and end off with maintenance. So let's get right into it. Here are two images. I'd like for you to point out Tula. Is it the one on the right or the one on the left? That's a tough one, isn't it? You're probably wondering what a Tula is. I want you to think of our learners for just a moment. When we introduce a new concept, picture, or instruction, most often the learner feels just as confused as we just did. It's easy for us to look at two pictures and discriminate one from the other. But if we don't know what it is, then we need to be taught which is which. Suppose I told you that this one here is a Tula. Easy enough, right? Let's continue. Let's jump into discrimination training in more depth. Stimulus discrimination training is when there are two stimuli and one behavior is required. This means that one stimulus will be reinforced while the other is not. This is how we achieve stimulus control and begin shaping new behaviors. For example, if you place two picture cards on the table, apple and fish, and ask the child to touch apple, with appropriate teaching, the child will point to apple and stop responding to fish, S delta. We discussed stimulus control in a previous class. Stimulus control is when a behavior or response occurs in the presence of that stimulus. We see this in our everyday behavior. Our behaviors are under stimulus control. We answer the door when the doorbell rings. We don't answer it otherwise. S delta is the incorrect stimulus. This is the stimulus that we don't want our learner to respond to. We want our learner to respond to the SD. Remember Tula? Can you pick it out from these three images? Which one do you think it is? Tough, right? Learners can make many mistakes during the discrimination process. For some, it can be very challenging to see a difference between the items due to the similarity between the items. Think back to the three images I just showed you. Picking out the Tula was hard because the items looked very similar. Think of a cat and dog. Teaching a learner that this is a dog may be fine. Then showing them all these dogs. The learner may learn that these are all dogs, but when shown a cat, the learner may say dog and overgeneralize. This is common amongst young children. So how do they learn to discriminate between cat and dog? The learner needs to attend to the stimuli and attend to the details. This can sometimes be very difficult for many children with autism or other developmental disabilities, mainly because the learner is not attending to the stimuli. Discrimination training is used to establish new behaviors to ensure that when we say touch your eyes, the learner touches eyes and not ears. In order to establish this, you need to be able to teach the learner to discriminate. You do this by teaching new skills in isolation first with neutral items, then teaching them in discrimination. You want to start with behaviors that sound different, look different, to minimize errors. If the learner does not learn to discriminate, they will not learn to respond accordingly. Here's an example. You want to teach your learner to touch the square. You have three shapes. all the same color in the array. This would be extremely challenging. I need to put the square in an array with items that look nothing like a square. I would use two neutral items, and I would ensure that they are not shapes. Depending on the learner, you may need to build this up very slowly. Suppose your learner is having a difficult time discriminating the square from the other shapes. You could add prompts such as making the target shape bigger than the other ones, so that it really stands out. However, just because you have taught a blue square doesn't mean that the learner will touch a green square. So you'd have to do the same procedure but with the different colors of the square to ensure that the learner isn't only touching a blue square but can also touch a green square, a red square, a yellow square, or gray square. Whether you are teaching a receptive skill or tact, intraverbal or manned, discrimination training is crucial. You will need to reinforce the correct response, and this is done by prompting the correct behavior and reinforcing it, ensuring you do not reinforce the wrong response. So if the learner touches your S delta, you would use an error correction and teach the correct response. This is where teaching is so crucial. A learner will not just touch the square because you said to. You need to prompt them and reinforce it. This may take several trials, powerful reinforcers, and proper teaching. So how do you teach concepts to people? How do we learn that a ball is a ball, whether it's blue, red, or green? Okay, before we go any further, let's do a Scrabble word. The word is FEOFF, F-E-O-F-F. And this means to invest in a fee. All right, let's continue with concept formation. Concept formation requires two things: stimulus generalization within a class and discrimination between classes. Antecedent stimulus class is a set of stimuli that share similar features that result in the same behavior. Stimulus generalization within a class teaches a learner that blue is blue. A learner would be able to select a blue ball or blue hat or blue chair, but the learner also needs to discriminate between classes. A learner would be able to select a blue chair from a yellow chair. These are the features that help identify an object or item by its physical form. For example, a cat has specific features such as whiskers, a tail, fur, and paws. A child will need to learn these features to discriminate between other animals such as a dog or a horse. Watson in 1920 conducted a controversial experiment with little Albert. The goal of the experiment was to show how we could condition fear of a white rat into little Albert, a 9-month-old boy. First, they presented a white rat to the boy and observed that he was not afraid of it. Second, they presented him with a white rat and then a loud noise on an iron rod. Little Albert responded by crying. The second presentation was repeated several times. Finally, they found that when the white rat by itself was presented, little Albert showed fear. Later, Watson and his assistant wanted to see if the fear transferred to other objects. Watson presented Albert with other furry animals. He cried at the sight of all of them. The study demonstrated how emotions could become conditioned responses. The ethical problem of the study was that Watson did not uncondition little Albert's fear. What this shows is that stimulus generalization has occurred. Seeing furry creatures evoked fear. Arbitrary stimulus class is when a stimulus category evokes a similar response item from that category. However, the items do not share common stimulus features. Think of categories such as clothing. Shirt, pants, and dress do not resemble each other, but they are all clothing. This is what we would call arbitrary stimulus class. They evoke the same response, clothing, but they're all different, and don't look the same. When teaching children to discriminate, differential reinforcement must be used. A learner will be reinforced for responding correctly to one but not to the other. Using matching to sample can help learners develop concepts. For example, a learner may match a picture to the word or object. This can be used to teach children to read, matching the word with the picture, creating that association. Stimulus equivalence, developed by Sidman in 1971, found that after he taught the boy to match a written word with spoken names, he was able to match words to pictures, pictures to written words, and say the written word. This was a boy with severe developmental delays. Stimulus equivalence is when new responses emerge without training or being reinforced due to reinforcement that occurred for a previous response that had some stimulus-stimulus relation. For example, matching a picture of a ball to an actual ball can lead to touching ball when someone says ball. Reflexivity is the absence of training and reinforcement. A learner can match an item to an identical item. For example, a learner will match a picture of a ball to a picture of a ball in an array of 3. A equals A. Symmetry, the learner is taught to touch a ball when asked touch ball, and without additional training. When shown a picture of ball, they can say ball. A equals B, B equals A. Transitivity, this is the final and most important part of stimulus equivalence. This is when a child is taught steps 1 and 2, then without training, the learner can do step 3. Step 1 is the written word car and a picture of a car. Step 2 is a picture of a car and they say car. And step 3 is they say car and a written word car. So it's important that the learner learns that they can touch the correct stimulus. It's reinforced versus when they touch the incorrect picture or engage in the incorrect response. The learner should not be reinforced when a mistake occurs. Once they learn that they are reinforced when the SD is present and not reinforced when they touch the S delta, they'll no longer touch S delta. Okay, let's go into the quiz and take a quick break. What is stimulus discrimination? A, when there is one stimulus and two behaviors. B, when there are two stimuli and one behavior. C, when there are many stimuli. D, when there are two behaviors and one stimuli. And the correct response is B, when there are two stimuli and one behavior. What is S delta? A, the incorrect stimulus that is reinforced. B, the correct stimulus that is reinforced. C, the correct stimulus that is not reinforced. Or D, the incorrect stimulus that is not reinforced. And the correct response is D, the incorrect stimulus that is not reinforced. The teacher told Johnny to pick up his shoes, but he picked up his hat. What do you think is the problem? A, Johnny is non-compliant. B, Johnny is not listening. C, Johnny does not have the instructions under stimulus control. Or D, Johnny just made a mistake. And the correct response is C, Johnny does not have the instructions under stimulus control. Concept formation requires two parts. What are they? A, stimulus generalization within a class and discrimination between classes. B, stimulus generalization between a class and discrimination within a class. C, stimulus discrimination within a class, and C, stimulus discrimination within a class and generalization between classes. Or D, none of the above. And the correct response is A, stimulus generalization within a class and discrimination between classes. The RBT said, touch the ball, and Johnny touched the horse. The RBT reinforced and moved on. What is the issue here? A, the RBT reinforced the discriminative stimulus. B, the RBT reinforced S delta. C, the RBT reinforced S alpha. Or D, none of the above. And the correct response is B, the RBT reinforced S delta. Let me demonstrate some of the ways of teaching and developing discrimination training techniques in practice. All right, everyone, I want to talk about discrimination training and, really using it in practice and something to really pay attention to. One of the things we're paying attention to is the actual item and that they're able to discriminate, let's say one apple from a different kind of apple. So that's discrimination training. So you have to make sure that that's embedded into your programming. Another kind of discrimination is being able to discriminate the red apple from the red crab, knowing that if I said to the individual, show me the one that's red, or if I was able to say, show me the red crab, that they would understand that this is red and this is red, this is the red crab. Now obviously if I said show me the one that's red, now here we also have a bike, so I need to be aware of what's in my array when I'm presenting different instructions. If I'm presenting a receptive skill, so I'm going to say show me the one that's red, the individual is going to point to the item that is red. So that's one thing if I'm testing it as a receptive skill. If I'm testing it as a tact, I might say something like, what color is this?
Red.
Good. So they're able to tact that this is red. So now I want to be able to test out and see if they can discriminate a variety of questions that I ask. So I might say to them, show me the one that is, show me the triangle. Where's the apple? Can you find the one that is blue? Okay, so now I did a variety of receptive skills. I'm testing out their ability to discriminate, let's say colors and things like that, and some simple nouns. Now I might say to them, what is it?
Apple.
What color is it?
Red.
What shape is it?
Triangle.
Good. So now I'm testing out by having the individual tact the item, talking about color, shape, and noun. Now I might say something like, what is this?
Bear.
So now I want to be able to test out and see if they're able to discriminate a variety of different questions. Now this is really important when you're working with children that are diagnosed with autism. You want them to be able to really listen to the SD and not just, if I point to this and I say, what is it? Chances are they're going to say bike because maybe they've learned and that's under stimulus control. But what if I pointed to this and asked what color is it or what does it have? And that's eventually what we want to get to. And that's when you get to more discrimination and really, really getting them to attend to what we're saying. So I'm going to ask a variety of different questions. Okay. So my learner is going to answer according to my questions. Now, another thing to notice here is I have a messy array of items. They're not all lined up. You don't have to line things up. I actually try to avoid lined up arrays. Nice messy arrays so that they're attending to different things, and it's just it's helpful. What is it?
Bike.
What does it say?
Grr.
What color is it?
Red.
What color is it?
Red.
Can you tell me what this is?
Triangle.
What color is it?
Green.
And what's that?
Crab.
Good. What color is this one?
Blue.
Good. What does it have?
Wheels.
Good. Again, so we're talking here about making sure that the individual can discriminate between different things. So we're talking about noun, we're talking about color, we're talking about what it has. So now what I want to do is let's take these away and I want to focus on one item. Again, I just showed you a lot of different picture cards, and we were testing to see that if I had a variety of different cards and I asked different questions, could they answer that? And you know, that's what we want. Yes, they can answer that. But what if I showed them one picture and I again did the same thing and I said, what is it?
Apple.
And what color is it?
Red.
And what does it have?
A leaf.
And where do you find it?
In a store.
Yeah, where else can you find it?
On a tree.
Very good. Now, as you can see, I'm trying to avoid using the word apple because I don't want them to attend to the stimulus or the word apple for the response to be triggered. I want them to attend to the picture and know information about it. So if I say, what color is it? Where do you find it? What do you do with it? Because then what I can do is I can do the same thing here and change the picture and say, what is it?
Pants.
What color is it?
Blue.
Where do you find it?
In the closet.
Very good. And what do you do with it?
I wear it.
Good. So again, I ask the exact same questions, and here I'm testing to see if they can discriminate between the WH questions or the questions that I'm asking, and in this situation, yes, they are. Now, most often what we see is I would say, what is it? And they would say pants, and then I'd say, what color are pants? Well, obviously pants can be different colors, so that question would have to be specific to the picture. If I said, where do you find pants? Then now I have a child who is memorizing the question and providing a response, but they're not listening to the actual SD and answering based on that. And that's something I think that's really important when you're doing discrimination training, and making sure that you really feel that the individual is discriminating the question or the item. Another thing that I like to do, and this was from a conference that I had gone to, Francesca's conference, and I think I mentioned her earlier in my talk. And one of the things was to add yes, no's, and conditional questions, again, to that discrimination part. So I could say something like, is this an orange?
No.
No. And so the child would be able to, or the individual that you are testing here, would be able to look at the item and discriminate that this is not, the orange, it's an apple. Is this a frog?
No.
Is this the color green?
Yes.
Is this a bike?
Yes.
Is this the color purple?
No.
So this would be a yes, no. Now our conditional questions are slightly different. So our conditional question would be something like this. Is this an apple or an orange?
Apple.
Is this purple or green?
It's green.
Does it live in the ocean or in the forest?
In the ocean.
Okay, so I'm giving the individual an opportunity to respond correctly by giving them an answer. And one of those answers, or I give them two possible answers, and one of those is the correct response. And I actually like to use this with intermediate to advanced learners that sometimes will get things incorrectly. So for example, if I said, what is it? And let's suppose our learner says it's an orange. So then I can say, is this an orange or an apple? Or is this an apple, if I wanted to do a yes, no. So let's give that a try. Our learner is going to make an error, and we're going to fix that error. What is it?
A circle.
Is this a triangle or a circle?
A triangle.
That's right. So by giving them the correct response in that conditional question, they were able to go to the correct response. Now that may not always happen, and you may have to go in with further prompting, which we'll talk about when we do prompting. But it's something that could possibly help, so that you're not always giving them the answer, but allowing them to look at that item, giving them the two responses, and then for them to make that discrimination in that moment that, oh, no, I made a mistake. It wasn't a circle. It really was a triangle. So that's another part to discrimination, something to keep in mind. Make sure that you are discriminating the SDs that you're using. So if I'm doing receptive and I say, show me the apple, let's say, touch the leaf, find the pants, where's the bike, point to the one that's under the water, Okay, I want to use a variety of SDs when I'm doing, let's say, a receptive. If I was doing a tact, I might say, what is it?
Apple. Apple.
What is this one?
A bike.
Can you tell me what this is?
It's a crab.
Okay, so I was able to vary it. Sometimes we do get stuck with just saying, what is it? So try to vary that. If we were doing, again, an intraverbal response, that would be different, but I might say, obviously the pictures wouldn't be here if I'm doing intraverbals, so I might say, tell me something that you can eat that you find at the grocery store.
An apple.
Very good. So you can see that I can use a variety of different questions and phrasing it differently for the learner depending on the domain and the verbal operant that we're working on. Okay, so that's discrimination in a nutshell. I hope that was helpful. For this course and this topic, we won't be doing a competency assessment. So if you're expecting one at the end of the course, there won't be one. So yay, let's continue. As you can see, teaching the learner to attend and look at the stimuli is essential. We need to establish these skills prior to teaching. We also need to simplify the teaching process so that the learner can discriminate between the items shown. You also need to use proper prompts when teaching. Some require hand over hand, while others require stimulus prompts. Increase the size or position of the item. And of course, we need to reinforce the correct response and ensure that we're not reinforcing the incorrect response. After teaching skills for days or even weeks, you want to ensure that the learner can do it with you or with anyone else. The worst thing that you can do is teach a learner and spend so much time to only find that they have lost the skill or learned it incorrectly. Children with autism can have a difficult time using a skill when there are changes from the original teaching environment. They will often learn and attend to very specific elements in the environment, and being able to do it outside of therapy or the classroom may seem impossible. The learner learns to ask for things in your classroom or label items in your center, but when they go home, their parents say, nope, he can't do it. Why would that happen? What's going on here? Planning for generalization and maintenance is crucial so that you can ensure your learner keeps those important skills. Don't let your hard work fade away because of poor planning. In practice, a learner may label a picture of a specific dog with a specific therapist at the table. If generalization is not programmed for, the learner may not be able to label another dog with another therapist in any other part of the room. Okay, let's do another Scrabble word. The word is jive, G-Y-V-E, and this is a shackle. The word is jive. All right, let's continue. In behavior analysis, it is essential to design, implement, and evaluate programs that produce generalized outcomes. It is not sufficient enough for a learner to acquire a skill without generalization and maintenance. Bear, Wolf, and Risley, 1968, described generalization as a behavior that is durable over time. The behavior is widespread to other behaviors, and the behavior occurs in a variety of environments. For example, a learner is able to identify multiple apples of different colors and shapes, both pictures and objects, whole apples versus apples that are cut up in halves or quarters. The learner is able to identify apple with their therapist, parent, and teacher. My little guy, Andy, was taught to label spoon, plate, cup, and fork. His therapist taught him in his home environment, and she was the only therapist working with him. When I took over, I did therapy in his daycare and home. When I was probing through previously acquired skills in the net as we were playing, he wasn't able to identify the spoon, cup, plate, and fork. This was a clear example of a lack of generalization. Our ultimate goal as trainers is to teach the learner a skill that can be used in the child's natural environment, home and school, and last forever. We don't want to teach the learner skills that they learn today and forget tomorrow. There are 3 types of generalization: response maintenance, setting situation generalization, and response generalization. So let's break this down. Response maintenance is when a learner continues to engage in the behaviors previously taught when intervention has stopped. For instance, a learner is taught to engage in deep breathing when in uncomfortable situations. The learner is first taught to use deep breathing in a contrived teaching setting, which is later transferred to the car, let's say. This is the aversive situation. Several months later, the learner engages in deep breathing when taking the elevator to stay calm. When teaching, you start in the contrived setting, but want the learner to be able to use it outside of that contrived setting, and that they're able to engage in the behavior over time. You want your learner to be able to use the skills you've taught them in a variety of situations. Setting situation generalization is when the learner is able to engage in the behavior in other environmental events and stimuli conditions. These were probably not used during training and different from the instructional setting. For example, you teach your learner to congratulate their friends after losing a game. And at a birthday party, the learner loses the game and says, "Congratulations to the winning child." Researchers conducted a study and taught 3 young adults with multiple disabilities to order, pay, and eat from a fast food restaurant. This was taught using a 22-step task analysis. The young adults were trained in a specific restaurant, and after, training probes were done in novel restaurants. All the young adults were able to order, pay, and eat in the novel restaurants. There are 2 types of settings. The instructional setting, which is the environment where the instructions occur. This is where the trainer programs for behavior change and promotes generalization. Generalization setting. This is a place or stimulus situation that differs in some way from the instructional setting. The settings can differ by place, such as home, school, table versus floor. The setting can also change by stimulus situations such as material or ways the targets are presented. For example, presenting math questions vertically during the instructional setting and then horizontally during the generalized setting. In practice, generalization is best included in programming immediately. For instance, when teaching a child to answer math questions, present the math questions both vertically and horizontally. A skill that occurs in the generalization setting at least once, but then stops occurring, response maintenance, is not evident. When a skill occurs in different settings and situations over time, this is achieved response maintenance. Response generalization. This is when a learner emits different responses that are untrained and different from the training situation. For example, you may have taught your learner to answer, "I'm fine," when asked, "How are you?" But then, the learner begins to respond, "I'm good" or "great" in other settings without previously being taught those responses. Some learners will produce these skills after intervention has stopped and even acquire new ones without training, while other learners will only produce some of their skills in other settings and may need a few contrived teaching opportunities in those environments. Sometimes learners engage in unwanted generalization. There are 2 types: overgeneralization and faulty stimulus control. Overgeneralization is when a behavior is under broad stimulus control of a stimulus class. For example, a learner learns to identify a picture of a dog. Now, anytime the learner sees any 4-legged animal, he calls it a dog. This is common in all young children. They overgeneralize, but as they learn that this is a cat and this is a dog, they begin to discriminate. With our learners, we need to do the same. We need to teach them to discriminate. All right, let's do another Scrabble word. The word is GIE, spelled G-I-E. And this is another form of give. Okay, let's continue and talk about faulty stimulus control. Faulty stimulus control. This is when the behavior is under restricted stimulus control of irrelevant antecedents. For instance, when the trainer says, "say ball," the learner says, "say ball." The learner is not attending to the correct stimulus and is engaging in the incorrect behavior. This is very common with children with autism. They learn to respond and engage in the behavior because generalization was not used properly in teaching. Or, for example, if you show them a picture and there is a fold or crease or a red dot, they attend to that rather than the actual picture. That is why it's important to use a variety of pictures when teaching a concept so that the learner is not shown just the one and memorizes the response based on that card. So let's talk about planning for generalization and maintenance. Planning starts with thinking of how a behavior will meet natural contingencies of reinforcement. Thinking of all the variations of the target behavior and the setting situation that should occur after training is complete. Thinking of how a behavior will meet natural contingencies of reinforcement. Is the target behavior appropriate for the learner? Will the target behavior be reinforced outside of training? If you teach the learner a skill, but it's not going to access natural contingencies of reinforcement outside of the training environment, chances are that skill will be lost. It needs to access reinforcement outside of the training setting. It needs to be on an intermittent schedule of reinforcement. Do the target behavior produce reinforcement for the learner? If not, this may not be the right target choice. For example, you teach a learner to request food items that will not be provided at home. If the learner's parents will not give cookies and chips at home, adding those as targets would be irrelevant to the learner. Teaching the learner to label places in the community that they have never been to or will never go to, again, is irrelevant to the learner. Thinking of all the variations of the target behavior and the setting situation that should occur after training is complete. For instance, when preparing for a final exam, you study a variety of items that might be on the exam. When planning variations for a target behavior, it's similar. For example, when teaching the learner to respond to their name, they will need to learn to respond to, "What's your name?" "Tell me your name," "Your name is," and so on. You want your teaching to be as close as the real world as possible so that the learner really benefits from the training. So how do you do that? Promoting generalization. Teach a variety of stimulus conditions and responses. Teach sufficient stimulus examples. Teach sufficient responses. When teaching sufficient examples, the more examples you use, the more likely the learner will respond to untrained situations. It's simple, but this takes planning. If you're teaching your learner to identify dog, you need to ensure that you have 4 to 5 exemplars of dog. 1 or 2 is not enough. So you want to have several items that you're teaching: animals, letters, addition questions. Stimulus context: how the question is presented, vertically versus horizontally. How you present the questions, the phrases you use, these need to be varied. For example, when teaching a receptive identification program, saying touch the, find the, where's the, you don't want to use the same phrase each time, otherwise the learner will only respond when asked, "Where's the dog?" But when you ask to find the dog, they can't respond. Setting. You want to vary the setting in where you teach. Teach at school, home, table, floor. If you only teach in one location, you will not get the generalization you want. Now, sometimes you don't have the luxury of moving around because you're given a small space to work in. I've worked in families' basements, small corners in daycares. Being creative in how you generalize is crucial. I worked with a young boy, Jimmy. I went to his Montessori school to do therapy. The school didn't have a spot for me, so they gave me the front lobby. I sat on the floor, he sat on a mini chair, and we used a mini wooden chair as a table. I brought my Mary Poppins bag, and that's where we did our therapy for 2 hours. My concern was, here we are in a small space, small table and chair. How could I ensure he would generalize? There was a small hallway where the cubbies were. I used that. I also had his parents run some of the targets at home and made arrangements with the teachers for me to come into the classroom from time to time to work on some of the skills. In the end, it worked. He was 2 years old, nonverbal, and had limited skills. Within 4 months, he was talking, doing puzzles, and shape sorters. He eventually started answering complex WH questions, reading, and progressed so nicely. By the age of 4, I really didn't have a major concern for him anymore. We did a little bit more work on his social skills, but he had come a long way. My biggest challenge was varying instructors. Another major part of generalization is to vary the people working with the learner. I knew this, but the challenge was his parents only hired me as his direct therapist. We were only doing 6 hours a week. I was the only one really running the therapy, which was a risk we took. In practice, use a variety of items when teaching MANS. Variety of balls, bubble containers, Play-Doh colors. Teach on the floor, table, standing, sitting. With receptive skills, vary the instructions. Get your shoes, bring your shoes, give me your shoes. Touch the ball, show me the ball, find the ball. Clap your hands, clap, show me clapping. If you're working on labeling objects or pictures, you can say things like, what is that? What do you see? If you're labeling ongoing actions, you can say things like, what's happening here? What are they doing? Tell me what he's doing. For intraverbal training, such as animal sounds, you can say things like, what does a dog say? A dog says? Tell me what a dog says. For WH questions, you can say things like, what flies in the sky? What's something that flies in the sky? Teaching children to discriminate between the correct and incorrect response is also essential. Some researchers have used the don't do that procedure to teach the learners not to engage in the inappropriate behavior. This helped minimize generalization errors. For example, don't open the door if an adult is not with you. Promoting generalization. Make the instructional setting similar to the generalization setting. There are 2 ways of doing that. Program common stimuli and teaching loosely. Program common stimuli include features of the generalization setting into the instructional setting. For instance, teaching your learner in a quiet setting in a very structured way most likely does not resemble a typical classroom. Vary the noise level, smells, lighting, temperature in the room, distractions, and so on. This is a great environment to practice things that could happen in the real world. It is a safe environment. You want your teaching environment to feel like the real environment. For example, at our center, the center looks like a school, grade 1 classroom setup. There are letters and numbers on the wall. There are kids playing on the floor, people talking, noise, and so on. When our learners transition to school, it's not a big change for them. When I did home-based therapy, the basements I was usually in were quiet, didn't look anything like a classroom. There were limited noise and less distractions. So I actually had to create distractions and noise. I would turn on the radio in the background, I would have the TV playing, anything to create noise and distractions so my learner could learn to focus under these conditions. Another way to promote generalization is by teaching loosely. Vary non-critical parts of the antecedent stimulus to avoid faulty stimulus control. For example, a learner may only fill in a part of a song when asked in specific conditions, lights out. I give this example because we had this happen to us. A therapist was working with the learner at the center, and she was working on song fill-ins. We had glow-in-the-dark stars in the washroom, and her target was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So she would take him to the washroom and sing the song with the lights out. The learner would fill in star. One day I came to observe and asked the therapist to run the target for me. I wanted to see how it was going and how it sounded. So she was sitting at her table and they were singing, but nothing. He wouldn't fill in. So she said, let me sit on the floor with him and engage him a little bit more. Again, nothing. So she said, you know, he really loves the stars in the washroom and we could do it there. So I said, sure. She sang, but nothing. Then she said, well, we usually turn off the lights. And what do you know? He fills in. Being in the dark washroom and seeing the stars evoked the behavior. Oh boy, though, did we have a problem. By teaching loosely, the learner will not attend to the tone of your voice, the lighting in the room, or the place of the table, but rather to the actual stimuli. So how do we teach loosely? Give instructions while sitting and standing in various places in the room, different times of day, loud voice, quiet voice, lights on or off, very, very, very. I can't stress that enough. Don't do it the same way every time. You're just setting you and your learner up to fail. When you're teaching something in ITT under these very strict light conditions, target it in the net as well and incorporate them there. Why? Because the learner will learn the skill at the table with these high probability cards in front of them and so on, but we want to ensure that they can also do it when asked while playing with that item. For instance, suppose you're teaching your learner to label spoon. In ITT, you show the spoon and say, what is it? The learner says spoon. Great. Now you want to go and play and pretend you're making soup, and then you can hold the spoon and say, what is it? And you want the learner to be able to say spoon. Baer in 1999 stated that to promote generalization, do the following. Have 2 or more teachers. At the center, we have a minimum of 3 therapists that work with the learner. He also said, teach in 2 or more places. At the center, we'll teach at the table, floor, and in the front room, in the back room, in the bathroom, in the staff room if needed. He also said, vary tone of voice. When playing in the net, we may pretend to be a monster talking, or we may use a squeaky voice. Vary your word selection, such as, what is it? What's that? What do you see? Present your stimuli in a variety of ways, such as a messy array. It doesn't always have to be in a straight line. Dress differently if you can. Now, at the center and many centers, they may use uniforms, and we do. We wear blue t-shirts, but the girls will often wear a sweater on top, tie their hair differently, which helps. You also want to vary reinforcers, as we've discussed before. Remember, program for generalization from the start. Indicate on your data sheet who ran the target, what day, the stimuli that you used. If you see your initials 2 days in a row, don't run the final probe. Tell another therapist to do so, and they can run it to ensure that generalization has occurred on those probes. I often tell therapists to teach to fluency. Teach your learners new skills to fluency. This means a learner should respond at a high rate of performance, have high accuracy, minimal mistakes to 0 mistakes, fast latency, responding quickly to the instructions or questions. You don't want your learner almost thinking. Some will say, well, the learner is thinking of the answer. If they're thinking, it really means that they don't really have the response. You want to ensure that your learner is not hesitant in their response. You want to ensure that they are confident. Good teaching will result in better performance. Probe at the start of your session. Teach to fluency, use multiple exemplar training, and end with a probe. I like doing a final probe at the end of my session because then I can say all the teaching I did in my 30 minutes or hour, the learner was able to probe correctly at the end of that period. This tells me that my teaching was really good. Use a dense schedule of reinforcement. Once mastered, place that skill on an intermittent schedule of reinforcement. New skills need to come into contact with reinforcement, and lots of it. Celebrate these successes and encourage your learner. Look at the positives and don't focus on the negatives, because you and your learner will feel it. No one likes seeing only the negatives. Yes, your learner will do things that are inappropriate. Don't focus only on those. Focus on how nicely they're responding, how nicely they're sitting, and from time to time, reinforce that. Don't let your learner depend on you for everything. If they have the skill, fade yourself away. When setting up targets, prepare sufficient pictures and objects, SDs, and other stimuli and responses to promote generalization. Don't take the easy way out. If you taught something once before in one way or used a specific phrase, use a different way to teach and a new phrase. Be aware of the position of your stimuli when teaching. Be sure to use multiple examples of the item when teaching. For example, if teaching the concept blue, don't just use the blue block. Be sure to use the blue hat, the blue block, the blue car. Discrimination training is achieved by presenting clear SDs, prompting, and reinforcing. If errors are made, error corrections should be used. Now that your learner has learned so many great skills and are able to discriminate and generalize, we now want to ensure that they can maintain those skills. Okay, before we continue, let's go into the quiz. Good luck. What schedule of reinforcement helps maintain acquired behaviors? A. Continuous schedule of reinforcement. B. Intermittent schedule of reinforcement. C. Teaching loosely. Or D. A VR5. And the correct response is B. Intermittent schedule of reinforcement. Matt is 8 years old and has learned to answer what questions with his therapist. Recently, a new therapist was asking him the same questions, but Matt was unable to answer them. Why do you think? A. He still needs to learn it with his first therapist. B. During teaching, the team did not use multiple teachers and he has not generalized across people, possibly. C. He needs more training with those WH questions. Or D. All of the above. And the correct response is B. During teaching, the team did not use multiple teachers and he has not generalized across people. When a learner is learning a new skill, what schedule of reinforcement should they be on? A. Continuous schedule of reinforcement. B. Intermittent schedule of reinforcement. C. Teaching loosely. Or D. VR5. And the correct response is A. A continuous schedule of reinforcement. Good job. Tammy is teaching Tommy to label cat. She is using his favorite picture of cat and only that picture. What issue could she run into? A. Cat is not an important skill to teach him. B. She should start with objects first. C. Reinforcement. Or D. Generalization. And the correct response is D. Generalization. Tammy is teaching Tommy to label cat. She's using his favorite picture of cat and only that picture. Why is this a generalization issue? A. She is the only instructor. B. She is only using one example of cat. C. She is not reinforcing often enough. Or D. Both A and B. And the correct response is D, both A and B. How do you generalize a skill? A. Vary the phrases you use. B. Always say the same thing. C. Teach it a few times. Or D. Both A and B. And the correct response is A. Vary the phrases you use. What is generalization? A. Reinforcing a behavior over time. B. a way to ensure behavior stays constant. C, durability of a behavior over time. Or D, both A and B. And the correct response is C, durability of a behavior over time. What is response maintenance? A behavior continuing to exist even after intervention has been terminated. B, when a learner emits a behavior in another setting or situation. C, when the learner emits untrained responses. D, when a learner learns a new behavior. And the correct response is A, a behavior continuing to exist even after intervention has been terminated. What is response generalization? A behavior continuing to exist even after intervention has been terminated. B, when a learner emits a behavior in another setting or situation. C, when the learner emits untrained responses. D, when a learner learns a new behavior. And the correct response is C, when the learner emits untrained responses. What is setting situation generalization? A behavior continuing to exist even after intervention has been terminated. B, when a learner emits a behavior in another setting or situation. C, when the learner emits untrained responses. D, when a learner learns a new behavior. And the correct response is B, when a learner emits a behavior in another setting or situation. The RBT is teaching Billy to identify the red letter G. She teaches him the skill 5 times and moves on to the next letter. What is the RBT missing in her teaching? A, programming common stimuli. B, teaching loosely. C, multiple exemplar training. D, teaching sufficient stimulus examples. And the correct response is C, multiple exemplar training. The RBT is teaching Billy to identify the letter G. She uses a big G, small g, red G, blue G. She always says touch G, so he doesn't get too confused. What is the RBT missing in her teaching? A, programming common stimuli. B, teaching loosely. C, multiple exemplar training. D, teaching sufficient stimulus examples. And the correct response is D, teaching sufficient stimulus examples. The RBT is teaching Billy to identify the letter G. She uses a big G, small g, red G, blue G. She says, touch, show me, find the letter G. She found that teaching him facing the wall in the quiet room was best to gain his attention. What is the RBT missing in her teaching? A, programming common stimuli. B, teaching loosely. C, multiple exemplar training. Or D, teaching sufficient stimulus examples. And the correct response is A, programming common stimuli. Once the learner has met generalization criteria across settings, 2 or more instructors, 4 to 5 exemplars, place the skill on an intermittent schedule of reinforcement. You can run maintenance probes at the 1 week, at the 1 month, or 6 months, and so on. Placing master targets on your index cards will help with the maintenance process. You can indicate on the back of the card when it was probed. that target can be put into the high probability box. Create a maintenance list and run the targets once a week or bi-weekly, monthly, semi-annually, or annually. Don't prompt it if it's mastered. As parents, teachers, and practitioners, we want to ensure that our learners can do things without relying on us. We don't want our learners to be prompt dependent. Now that you've been promoting generalization and the learner is able to engage in the required behavior with a variety of people under different situations, using a variety of phrases and material, you want to promote independence. Allow your learner to engage in the behavior without jumping in to help them. Encourage them to do it. Encourage them to do it on their own. Or maybe even try new, similar behaviors independently without your assistance. It is best to organize the maintenance binder in sections if you have one: acquired programs, programs on hold, raw data, behavior data, supervision notes, and so on. Within each section, placing all data sheets in alphabetical order or by domain is best. Keep the maintenance binder in a safe place. Okay, my final thoughts. Our top priority is to teach our learners how to learn and not necessarily teaching them specific targets only. We don't want our learners to learn just ball, but we want them to learn about ball and what makes it a ball. By teaching the learner to discriminate and generalize, we can achieve this goal. Using a multiple control of verbal behavior, we can ensure the learner is understanding a complete concept as opposed to learning a single element of that item. We eventually want our learners to look at a ball and be able to answer questions such as, what is a ball? What do you do with a ball? What shape is a ball? Where can you play with a ball? And so on. Only if and when a learner has discriminated questions and targets, generalized and maintains such targets, can they answer questions to this complexity. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Say dog.
Dog.
What's this?
It's a fox.
Show me the banana. What's this?
It's a koala.
Great, do this. Where's the bear? Do this. Where's the penguin? Find the alligator. What color is this?
It's purple.
Very good. Now I want you guys to notice that I'm changing up my SD. My pace is going pretty fast, or as fast as I can, where the learner can still respond. I don't want to go too fast for them or too slow because I don't want to lose them either. Find the zebra. Where's the banana? Is this a cat?
No.
Is this an alligator or a monkey?
It's an alligator.
You got that right. And what's this?
It's a bear.
Good. What's this?
It's a bike.
And say apple.
Apple.
And touch your eyes. What's this?
It's a king.
Good. Is this a circle or a triangle?
It's a triangle.
And is this a cat?
No.
Is this a dog?
No.
Is this purple?
No.
Is it a penguin?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Do this. Very good. Okay. Touch your head. Where's the koala? Say chip.
Chip.
Where's the zebra? What color is it?
Orange and white.
Very good. Touch your eyes. Put your hands down. Nice listening. Show me the bunny. Where is the penguin? Is this a cat or a zebra?
A zebra.
You're absolutely right. Is this a dog or a koala?
Koala.
Good. Is this a fox?
Yes.
Is this a dog?
No.
Is this a baby?
No.
No. What is it?
A penguin.
And what's this?
A koala.
And you got your 10 points. Yay! Hi, 10.
Extra points. Let's do.
You got extra points. You're right. Okay.
May I please have the blue?
Oh, sure.
May I please have the orange?
Oh, sure.